From New York, now to my extraordinary exclusive interview with Ye, previously known, of course, as Kanye West, one of the most famous and influential artists in the world. He's been causing global outrage over the past 2 weeks with anti-Semitic tirades, which led to him being cancelled by social media platforms. I wanted to give him the opportunity to set the record straight and explain if he meant what he said. Well, eventually, he apologized for what he said was hurtful comments about the Jewish people. But it took a while to get there. It was a fiery conversation, passionate. It was funny at times. It was explosive. It's unmissable television. The full interview will air later this week. But here's the moment I think will get most people talking.
You don't hold accountability to my pain. You're being a Karen.
I'm talking about. I'm not a Karen
to the pain.
I'm not a Karen, and I'm not going to cancel you, and I'm not going to uncensor you. I'm simply going to challenge you on what you're saying. I think you don't understand the pain that you've been causing with some of these comments, and I think that one in particular, I can understand.
Oh my God, God forbid, one comment could cause people to feel any of the pain that my people have went through for years. Even like the blacks being ushered to the left during the civil rights movement. No one has cared about black people.
All right.
No one is.
Let me say, I agree that the racism against black people has been utterly deplorable, shameful, unacceptable, and thank God the world is beginning to move to a better place about the way it has treated black people like you. However, one form of racism doesn't justify.
It's almost in a better place.
Well, one form of racism doesn't justify another.
It's not a better place.
I'm not cutting you off. I'm finishing my sentence so you can respond. One form of racism. It is racism when you say I'm going DEFCON for Jewish people.
I was in a position where I've been hurt, and this is the way I had the right to express myself. The point of this interview is for you to question me, and then for me to answer and say, okay, even though the same rules are not applied to my people, if a person with a gun or drugs is pulled over and has three other people in the car, they're all going to jail. I'm not going to apply that to Jewish people for the sake of this conversation. Isn't that what you wanted? But you know what you did? You tried to civil rights me. You tried to pull me back to a week ago, but we're here today. There's been plenty of conversations and commentary since that, but you want me to go back to 1960.
No.
You want me to go back to 7 days ago.
All right, let me jump in. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to reflect.
Okay, so have we grown? Have we grown?
Here's how we grow. Yeah, here's how we grow. I want you to reflect.
No, have we grown? Have we grown? You're not in charge of my growth. You're not in charge of my growth, Chris.
Okay, let me phrase it like this. I'm about to suggest to you how you may grow if you choose to grow this way. And you can ignore me. You can ignore me.
Piers, how much money are you worth?
Not as much as you, sadly.
Exactly. So take my advice. Maybe you'll get richer.
I would love to take your business advice.
Why would I listen to you?
Why don't you hear what my advice is and then work out if I'm wrong? Can we do that deal?
Well, the thing is, you haven't given me any credit or a moment of reflection for the comparison that I made, the brilliant, if I do say so myself, comparison that I made to the cops pulling over one black person and locking everyone up.
I understand what you're saying.
And my tweet having issues. Wait a second, I wasn't done with the sentence. My tweet referring to all Jewish people, and I said, for the sake of this conversation, I will refer to the business people who have destroyed me and my people and my fellow creatives. But you didn't even accept that I gave you that. You tried to push me back into 1960.
No, I didn't.
You tried to push me back into last week.
No, I didn't.
Okay, do you accept that example that I gave you?
I understand completely the example you gave me. I think all racism is wrong.
So I feel that we've grown.
I would like you to reflect.
I feel that we've grown. Do you feel we've grown?
If you've now changed what you wanted to say originally, my question for you is, do you now regret saying DEFCON 3 on Jewish people? Are you sorry you said that?
No.
I think it matters. You should be.
Absolutely not. You know, I will say I'm sorry for the people that I hurt with the DEFCON, the confusion that I call. I feel like I cause hurt and confusion. And I'm sorry for the families of the people that had nothing to do with the trauma that I had been through, and that I use my platform where you say hurt people, And I was hurt.
It's an uncensored interview. You said something which you've now wished you hadn't said, and you've apologized. I actually think that says a lot about you, right? That shows you've got that ability to be self-aware, to understand when you cross a line. I think someone like you, with all your energy and creativity and your passion, you're going to say stuff. The way that you talk constantly and in such an extraordinary manner, you're going to trip up. You're going to say things the wrong way. I don't think there's anything wrong in when you do that, doing what you just did and saying, look, I'm sorry, I crossed a line, I apologize.
I want to say that it's wrong to hold an apology hostage, and I got to let go of that and free myself of the trauma and say, look, I'm just going to give it all up to God right now and say to those families that are hurt, I really want to give you guys a big hug, and I want to, I say I'm sorry for hurting you with my comments, and I want to word it in not in like a political way, but in a presidential way, which means what I knew a president to be when I was growing up.
So that was Ye, formerly Kanye West. It's an extraordinary interview. We're going to actually air almost the entire thing at the end of the week, so people can see everything in real context. But very obviously, throughout the course of the interview, he began, I think, to understand the impact of his words, which had caused such offence, and finally got to a place where he apologised to people who'd been offended, particularly Jewish people. Well, joining me now is Fox News contributor Tyrus, along with KISS frontman Gene Simmons. Let me start with you, Tyrus. We just had to quickly get that series of clips together to try and say some of the context of what happened, because to start with, he was resolute, I'm not going to apologise, and then went on a sort of long clarification of he was talking about business people who had, in his view, had let him down and so on. But there's no doubt the original comment that he made, that he tweeted, for which he was deplatformed from social media, it was talking about the Jewish people in generality, and therefore very offensive.
Well, first of all, I don't even know if I would call that an interview. That was you sat him down under the tree of wisdom. And that reminded me so much of seeing what a father would talk to an angry son. Like, you worked through so many emotions with him to get him to a place to where he was able to.
And you really see that over the 2 hours.
That.
It's a journey.
And that was
a
tremendous, and your patience, because I'm telling you right now, no one else was going to sit there for 2 hours.
Right.
And I think long after this interview, you're going to help him, because what I see when I see Ye, I see a hurt man. His life has been in public nonstop. Horrible divorce, fighting over his children. Every time he speaks, some group will take advantage of him, use him. He's a victim of his wealth, but he's not a victim. And the one thing he said that I thought just was poignant, and you walked right through it, was, I make more money than you. How can I get from you? But here's the deal. You can't buy wisdom with money.
Yes.
And I look at him as a former bodyguard. If I was his bodyguard, I wouldn't have let him wear the white shirt. I wouldn't have let him do those things, even if it would have cost me my job, because he's helping other individuals rise. They get the world famous attention, but he gets all the consequences. Yes. And his stuff gets lost in his anger and his depression, because what he was talking about, I get. In a lot of the record companies, you will always see the same thing. I think Michael Jackson is probably the biggest case of that, where he had a song, What They Talking About Me, where he wanted to use the term and it came down from, you can't use that word. You can't depict us in that way, from the record people. But they're just fine with using the N-word and almost pushing that. So that's where a lot of the anger comes from, is be across the board. You don't want your group disrespected on your record labels, but you're fine with and it's on the rappers as well. Yeah. But that's where the argument came from. But when you're an angry, hurt individual who's basically working out his emotions in front of a camera, nothing good is going to happen. Right. And getting him to apologize, he could not have done that without you. No, and that you should be proud of that.
It took nearly 2 hours for him to, I think, reach a place of self-awareness about it, and actually to reach a place of calmness enough to say it. But Gene Simmons, you know, I think you probably have to see the whole thing in real time to really get to the journey he went on to get to that place of apology. But I mean, do you accept the apology? Do you think the Jewish people should accept the apology? Or was what he said such a line crosser that he shouldn't be allowed to even talk about this anymore?
Well, you certainly put me in an awkward position. I'm not here to speak for Jews or the Jewish people or anything, although by birth I happen to be one, in fact, an Israeli. I had no choice in the matter. That's just the luck of the draw. Let me state, in the interest of full disclosure, Ye/Kanye and I have never met. We've never emailed each other. I have no idea what's in his mind. All I know is what the media has shown me of him. And the astute gentleman who was on before me, his comments, I think it sounded true to these ears, which is Kanye sounds, from everything I've heard, it's erratic behavior from my point of view, respectfully. He sounds really wounded. He sounds hurt. So he's lashing out. I get it. Let's be clear about this. African Americans have been tortured physically, mentally, culturally for decades, centuries. But you're talking to people who've heard this story and have been tortured mentally, physically for thousands of years. Goes back to the Bible, which our people wrote and gave to the rest of you guys. So you have to go back in history and get a sense of what all this means. You're talking about African Americans and Jews. Jews have done well, let's be clear, because they worked for it. But don't kid yourself. Racism, anti-Semitism exists right next to each other, and we're all victims in some way or the other by the ruling establishment, whoever and whatever they are, the consensus of the public. But look back at Martin Luther King. Do a little research, Google and schmoogle. Who's standing right beside Martin Luther King in a dangerous march in Birmingham, along with Jesse Jackson and everybody else? You got a rabbi holding a Torah. He's right there in the front, knowing full well when he goes back up north or on the East Coast, he's going to get tortured, by people who have different points of views. So, first of all, African Americans should understand that Jews understand the torture and the racism because been there, okay? Continue to be there. Jews are not the most popular people on the face of the planet, but there are many other peoples, races, and other peoples who get racism. So the only piece of advice that I have as somebody in the peanut gallery, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physician, I don't know much about Ye or Kanye. I've got friends who are close enough and so on. If there's medication, I respectfully urge for the gentleman to take the medication. If he's surrounded by the wrong people, get some nicer people, because the most important thing you have to realize is when you're a billionaire, and God bless him for that, it's the majesty, the miracle of the American capitalist system. There we go. In a country full of racism, the capitalist system allowed you to become a billionaire. And
I have to say, as he reminded me quite regularly, by the way.
Sure did.